Hello, this is a video about supply chains, and we're going to discuss the overall level. What are the different views from different authors on supply chain? Supply chain is a topic so diverse that it's very hard to contain in a single textbook or a single book. And in this video, I'm trying to consider all the different aspects that I've seen as relevant in consideration to supply chain. Of course, this is too general and the details are not covered. So in these ideas, I have grouped them in three groups. The first one is supply chain origins and impacts. The second one is about how is supply chain management practice at the present time, what is the theory and how it is implemented. And also we have a discussion on supply chain management in the future, what is likely the outcome, and what are issues that we need to take into consideration when we think about supply chains for the future. So in its origin, supply chain wouldn't exist without the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution created the framework for mass manufacturing and a different type of organization of labor, including unions, and it affected the way that we organize even the civil society in cities and manufacturing centers, the way that we consume, and the way that we expect the products to be repeatable, and the way that we measure the quality of our living, and all these happen essentially as a consequence of the Industrial Revolution. Incentives to create a supply chain as we understand it today are frameworks for the reduction of regulation in trade. So a lot of treaties for increment the amount of trade between countries with the purpose of increasing cooperation have created a globalization or a global market and long supply chains that now products can be produced in many different countries. Even the simplest product, say a shirt, may have been manufactured in 3 or 4 countries. And all these has been empowered by the use of information technology. The supply chain as we understand it today is an effort in the synchronization of activities. And this synchronization would not exist without the use of smart and powerful information technologies, information and communication technologies. In terms of the present, I have separated ideas in terms of supply chain management thinking and supply chain management implementation. In terms of the thinking, we discussed there theories that are important associated with the supply chain, and one would be the importance of supply chain itself, because the supply chain can be used as a tool for different ways, like global competition. It affects or is affected by fuel and labor costs at the global scale. So if a country has a low labor pay, other countries might be affected because easily manufacturing site can be currently relocated to a distant country. Also, we have issues with security and compliance in terms of the quality of the product, the safety in which the workers have to operate, and the conditions in order to make it a fair market. We need to include the fact that workers should not be exploited as slavery. We have environmental concerns, of course, and the financial impact that if one branch of the supply chain is affected for a natural disaster, the rest of the supply chain might be affected too. And of course, all these, as I mentioned, could be used as a geopolitical weapon when a few people could have control of some critical resources, like it could be some rare earths for the manufacturing of cellular phones, or the price of oil. Also, in this thinking about supply chain, we have the supply chain needs. These are more the day-to-day or the strategic decisions that we need to make. And evidently, we need to balance the supply and the demand when there is uncertainty on how much supply, how much demand there will be. So it is not only affecting the prices, but the amount of investments that we will put into making the transformation into final goods. And this is not an easy task when we take into consideration the time variable. There could be a disconnection between the signal that we perceive to be the demand and what actually is happening. And when this happens, one of the effects is the bullwhip effect. The bullwhip effect will generate variation that is beyond what the market is actually having, to make it seem like it is a huge variation of increment in orders and then drop in orders and increment in orders, when in fact the customers could not be generating this, and it is just a natural effect of systems. It would happen in any mechanical system or electronic system as well. And in many cases, the reasons for this bullwhip effect is simply a delay in the information. We have the need for shorter product life cycles, which are generated by, for instance, in the technology we have in computers or cellular phones or tablets and music devices that can be updated very frequently or updated in the newest models. And that generates the need of the supply chain to be careful. Managers should be careful of not going into obsolescence of products. They need to prepare the supply chain to manage those situations, and at the same time that managers should deliver to global and local markets, and that means different constraints in terms of regulations and the time to deliver. And all these should happen in seamless integration. That means that the customer should not perceive that maybe there are 2 or 3 parties actually delivering the product. For the customer, it should be an immediate response and integrated information with customer service and so on and so forth. And that should operate as if it was a single entity, even though in a supply chain many players put together their efforts in a synchronized way. In terms of the supply chain strategies, we can consider the rationalization, that it's reducing the cost for the operation of the supply chain. There are many ways to do this. Anything from finding a cheaper vendor to reducing the middleman, which is what's happening with new apps and new mobility applications like Uber and Airbnb and this share economy, or with digitalized books. All this is actually cutting the middleman. We have synchronization, in which we are competing for with reliability in terms of being able to deliver the product when the customer wants it. We are competing customization, which is having the ability to deliver the product that actually each customer wants, even though it might be unique, and still be able to produce it as at the cost of mass manufacturing. And that's also a challenge, but also new technologies are allowing us for this when we have automating cutting machines and things of that nature that allow us to produce one at a time products with very little setup times. Also, we have a competition based on innovation, in which we compete based on the introduction of new products or new services, ever trying to leapfrog the competition. In terms of the implementation of the supply chain, we have different topics. We have the typical topics or subjects associated with logistics, which include the transportation, the processing systems for the orders, the location of the warehouses, the type of material handling systems that we have, whether if it's completely automated or robotized or manual, and so on. We have, very importantly, management science, which include operations research and the use of algorithms to optimize the results of corporations by reducing costs or maximizing benefits. A topic that is currently very hot is analytics. Analytics is the use of all the information that the companies are gathering about the customer, where it goes, the type of purchases they have, who are they friends to, and so on, in order to try to understand the decision for purchasing a product that the customer has and have an influence on that. So another analytics used in the actual improvement of the performance of reducing the cost of operating the supply chain. We have traditional forecasting techniques, and we have also supply chain theory, which includes the understanding of queuing theory. That's very important, because understanding how the lines, the waiting lines form, affect the perception of the customer, and why do they actually present in reality, and what are the optimal policies due to the behavior of these queuing lines. What are the optimal policies that we could have in order to minimize the bad effects on the performance. We have aspects of design of products, design for form and function. We have engineering design and aesthetic design, and many customers are now selecting the products basically from the design perspective, because the engineering and the functionality of the products are pretty much equivalent. So the design as an element of decision making, it's very important, and that design goes to both products and services. When we go to a restaurant, the ambient that we have, it's part of the design of the experience for the customer. So design is very important. We also have to take into consideration social sciences, because social science would allow us to understand the customers, but also would allow us to understand the impact of supply chains in society, because it is documented that people have been put into sweat shops, and more recently manufacturing sites in Asia have problems with collapsing buildings, and even people who commit suicide because they see their lives just going to work and going to sleep and then going to work, and that's all they will ever be able to do. So we need to take into consideration aspects of social science. We need, of course, to consider management, from financial aspects to inventory management to leadership and all those areas. In supply chain management, we have to leverage the information that we have in all the previous discussions in order to empower the decision-making process, whether if it's the use of analytics or operations research, or in the most modern way, the artificial intelligence that are starting to develop in the computers that are actually threatening jobs that usually required a human being, not only from the labor perspective, but actually in white collar jobs positions. Finally, we have the future for supply chain. We need to consider globalization, and that includes issues with taxes and nationalism. Think about companies like, well, I'm not going to mention companies, but some companies in the U.S. That are classified as U.S. corporations only pay 3% or less taxes, and in terms of the income that is coming from overseas. And if they are located in places like California, and some of its municipalities are having problems with bankruptcies, and other cities as well. It is interesting to know that these huge corporations have located and have the safety of and legality of the U.S. Economy, and they have the protection of the different aspects that being a U.S. corporation mean to them, and still they are not paying taxes from the overseas operations, so that has to be considered. You have cultural impacts, economic blocks, in the sense that we have, for instance, the European Union, and as you know, there are issues with countries not wanting to remain in the European Union, or having issues keeping up with the standards of restraint or the productivity that other countries have. And even countries like England playing a game as if they were not part of the European Union at all. So these are an interesting thing in the globalization of the markets. And of course, we need to consider that and economic trends. We also have the impact on people and the quality of living and the education and demographics, where people are going to live and how people are living. And environmental issues, which include the need, for instance, of recycling. With ever more people coming out of poverty due to globalization, the consumption of new products and new materials cannot be only due to extracting new materials. There is a limited amount of resources, as you know from other topics. Matter cannot be created, and it can only be transformed, and we need to find a way to transform the material that we have in limited amounts in terms of recycling, and that of course include the disposal of it. And with the knowledge that we're getting in biotechnology, we have to consider bioethical and biothreats conditions in terms of our safety and the safety of other living animals or plants, and overall consider that there is a limited carrying capacity of the earth. So those are the topics that I would consider if as I am preparing these videos. Maybe I will try to cover most of this material in more detail, and I hope you appreciate these videos. Have a good day.